I want to watch the news.
Are you making headway at least?
This is the news.
Schmack-a-magob, it's time for the only news that matters, and yeah, it's time to talk about Sammy Hagar again. Yes, he lives rent-free in my head. You know, he's been running around spreading his basic lies over and over again. He's been doing it for the past few weeks, and some of it's whole stuff, like he says, David Lee Roth refuses to see that I was more successful in Van Halen than he was. And David Lee Roth doesn't care because the fact is, David Lee Roth was more successful in Van Halen than Sammy was. It's a fact. Concert ticket sales, album sales. You know, it drives me nuts that nobody ever challenges Sammy Hagar to these constant lies he tells the media, because the media is basically retarded. They don't know. They believe Sammy when Sammy says stupid stuff like, oh, I sold more with Van Halen. Nobody challenges him on this. And I can't get an interview with the guy. I've tried. And he's still crying about how Alex Van Halen won't return his phone calls. Doesn't he sound like some obsessed ex-girlfriend just won't leave you alone? But even worse than an ex-girlfriend, because Sammy can go to the media and spread it all around the world. So when Alex sees you crying to the media that he won't pick up your phone calls, I don't think he'll want to pick up your phone calls even more now. About a year or so ago, he was on Howard Stern and he says, I don't have a problem with David Lee Roth. He has the problem with me. But I don't see David Lee Roth going out and saying anything about Sammy these days. But boy, does he go off on Dave on just about all these interviews. Now here's a new lie I haven't heard him say before. He said when he went out on that tour with David Lee Roth, the Sam and Dave tour, that before that tour, as a solo artist, he was selling out arenas and amphitheaters. That's what he claims. And of course, he claims this to somebody in the media that's brain dead and doesn't realize that this guy is so full of it. And also saying how, oh, I sold more than David Lee Roth. I got twice as much money as David Lee Roth. You sure do. Off that Cabo Wabo tequila you got hundreds of millions for. Where Dave's money is all from his musical career. Where nobody will show Sammy Hagar the numbers of David Lee Roth, what he made in Van Halen, and he even sold more as a solo artist with just a few albums compared to Sammy Hagar's discography that's something like 15 solo albums. You know, I don't even think Sammy Hagar is aware of this because nobody wants to tell him. Everybody seems to be afraid to tell Sammy, yo, Sammy, the figures you have on these album sales are as lame as your music. And then he goes into his whole, oh, I cherish my memory with Eddie Van Halen. Like he's so sentimental. And then in the next interview, he brings up, yeah, it's a shame it ended because, you know, Eddie was on alcohol and drugs. He can't just let it go. Just stop bringing that up. He said he regretted what he wrote in his book about Eddie, but he doesn't seem to regret it now in interviews. But before he says that, he's like, oh, I cherish him. I miss him. And then, yeah, he did drugs and alcohol. That's why it all ended.
Fuck you, Eddie Van Halen. Fuck you, Eddie Van Halen. Fuck you, Eddie Van Halen.
Somebody needs to call him out on all this. But interviewers out there, I guess Sammy Hagar's not really a high priority for them to do their homework on. It's just like, oh yeah, it's that guy that was in Van Halen. And that's the thing about Sammy Hagar interviews. Nobody cares about anything except for the Cabo Wabo tequila and that he was in Van Halen. They don't interview him about Three Lock Box and his solo career because his solo career was so low, you couldn't really see it. The success of his solo career was mediocre at best till he joined Van Hagar or Vangina. When he joined that, his solo album sold more. Come on, if it wasn't for Vangina, Sammy Hagar would be opening for Loverboy at the Food Truck Festival today. He got lucky. With that Vangina money, he bought that tequila and he sold that tequila for millions. He wouldn't have been able to buy that tequila with the success of his song, I Can't Drive 55 from 15 years earlier. When Sammy Hagar dies, he'll still be lying. He'll be lying still, but he'll be lying. An annoying person, a liar, and a downgrade walk into a bar. The bartender says, "What can I get you, Sammy Hagar?" "Thank you very much. Try the veal and tip the waitress." So after all these interviews of Sammy lying, Michael Sweet said something. He put up an article where Sammy's talking about how he makes 6 times the income Daily Roth does. So Michael Sweet says, "I know there was another reason why I love and respect the Daily Roth fronted Van Halen 100% more. Daily Roth helped build that house, and Sammy Hagar only lived in there later on. Regardless, whether you like Daily Roth or not, give him the respect he deserves. So tired of seeing and reading all of this." This is Michael Sweet saying this. And some of you may not know this, but the Lord speaks through Michael Sweet. And God is sick of Sammy Hagar. So that's it for the only news that matters. I want to thank you all for watching. Thank you so much. If you'd like to donate, I got a PayPal in the description below. And please subscribe to this channel and press that little notification bell. And please give this video a like. It's good for the YouTube. So, stay frosty. Listen to Black Sabbath and smack 'em a gob.
Farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain.
Drink water. Before we get canceled, check out the Rock and Metal Combat Podcast with me and Wadzilla. We are the Podcast Kings. Link to the podcast is in the description below, and also a link to the YouTube page. Check out older episodes with visuals. And very soon, either Ian and I will learn how to go on YouTube Live. Might be soon. So check out the greatest podcast ever according to science.com. It's also God's favorite podcast and Satan's favorite podcast as well. So check out the Rock and Metal Combat Podcast before we get canceled.